It's May 455 AD. The city of Rome, 1 million people, 1,000 years of history, the greatest empire the world has ever seen, is completely, utterly undefended. No army stands at the gates. No general is preparing a defense. The emperor is already dead. And it didn't happen because Rome was weak. It didn't happen because Rome ran out of soldiers. It happened because one woman, trapped, humiliated, and desperate, sent a letter. And the man who received that letter sailed across the sea with an army, walked through the gates of the most powerful city in history, and took everything. This is the story of the night Rome fell. To understand what happened in 455, you need to understand what Rome actually was. At its peak, the Roman Empire stretched from Scotland to Egypt, from Portugal to modern-day Iraq. 1 million people lived inside the city of Rome alone, a number that wouldn't be matched by any European city for over 1,000 years. They had running water, sewage systems, public libraries, a professional army that had conquered virtually every civilization they had ever encountered. Rome wasn't just powerful, Rome was civilization itself. But by 455 AD, something had gone terribly wrong. In the 25 years before the sack, the Western Roman Empire had gone through nine different emperors. Most of them were assassinated. Some lasted only a few weeks. The imperial throne had become a death sentence. The economy was collapsing. The government was printing worthless coins to pay its debts. Taxes were crushing the poor while the wealthy bought exemptions. The gap between the rich and the starving was growing wider every single year. And the army, the legendary Roman legions that had once made the whole world tremble, was now mostly made up of Germanic mercenaries, men who had no particular loyalty to Rome, men who fought for whoever paid them. Rome was a hollow shell, a magnificent marble-clad, gold-plated hollow shell. And one man watching from across the Mediterranean had been waiting for exactly this moment. His name was Gaiseric, King of the Vandals. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because the word vandalism literally comes from his people. Let's talk about the man who started this disaster. His name was Petronius Maximus, a wealthy Roman senator, powerful, ambitious, ruthless. And in March of 455, he did something unforgivable. He arranged the assassination of the reigning emperor, Valentinian III. And then, almost immediately after the blood dried, he declared himself the new emperor of Rome. But that wasn't enough for him. He then forced Valentinian's widow, Empress Eudoxia, to marry him, against her will, forcing a grieving empress to marry the man who had just murdered her husband. And if that wasn't cruel enough, he then forced her daughter, Eudoxia, to break off her engagement. An engagement that had been formally arranged with Gaiseric, the son of the most powerful warlord in the Western Mediterranean, the son of Gaiseric, King of the Vandals. Now, put yourself in Empress Eudoxia's position for a moment. Your husband has been murdered. You've been forced into a marriage you never chose. Your daughter's future has been ripped away from her. You are trapped inside a palace, in a city that is slowly dying, ruled by the man who destroyed your family. What would you do? She wrote a letter, a secret letter, smuggled out of Rome, carried across the Mediterranean, delivered to the palace of Gaiseric in Carthage, the very city that Rome had destroyed 300 years earlier, salting the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. In that letter, Empress Eudoxia did the unthinkable. She invited the Vandals to come to Rome. She told Gaiseric that the marriage agreement with his son had been broken illegally, that she and her daughter had been wronged, that justice needed to be restored. She was asking him to come and take what was his, and Gaiseric, a man who had been looking for an excuse to attack Rome for years, didn't need to be asked twice. He assembled his fleet, he gathered his warriors, and he began sailing north. Rome had no navy. There was no one to stop him. Word reached Rome before the ships did, and the reaction of Emperor Petronius Maximus, the man who had orchestrated this entire catastrophe, tells you everything you need to know about who he was. He panicked. He tried to flee the city. He disguised himself, gathered what valuables he could, and attempted to slip out of Rome before the Vandals arrived. He didn't make it very far. The people of Rome, the citizens he had ruled, the citizens he had failed, recognized him in the streets, and they tore him apart. His body was thrown into the Tiber River. The emperor of Rome, dead at the hands of his own people, his corpse floating in the river he had once ruled from above. He had been emperor for exactly 77 days. On June 2nd, 455, Gaiseric ships arrived at Ostia, the port of Rome, and there was absolutely no resistance, no army, no defense, no emperor. There was only one man who came out to meet Gaiseric at the gates, Pope Leo I. The Pope of Rome rode out alone to negotiate with the Vandal King. And what happened next is one of the most remarkable moments in all of ancient history. They made a deal. Gaiseric agreed that there would be no fire, no murder, no torture. The people of Rome would not be harmed. In exchange, the city would simply be given to him. The gates of Rome opened, and the Vandals walked in. What followed was 14 days of systematic, methodical, almost professional looting. The Vandals were not a mob. They didn't rampage randomly through the streets. They moved through the city with a list. They stripped the Capitoline Temple of its gold roof tiles. They emptied the imperial palace of every treasure accumulated over centuries of conquest. They took sculptures, silk, jewels, silver, furniture, anything that had value. And most significantly, they took the menorah. The great golden menorah from the Temple of Jerusalem, which the Roman Emperor Titus had seized when he destroyed the Jewish temple 400 years earlier, and had been displayed in Rome as a trophy of conquest ever since. The trophy of Rome's greatest victory, now itself a trophy of Rome's greatest defeat. And at the end of those 14 days, when the ships were fully loaded and there was nothing left worth taking, Gaiseric sailed home, taking with him the treasures of a 1,000-year empire, and Empress Eudoxia, the woman who had written the letter, who had invited all of this, who had set the whole thing in motion. She was taken too, along with her daughters, as hostages. Her daughter Eudoxia was finally given to Huneric, Gaiseric's son, the wedding that had been promised from the beginning. The empress had gotten exactly what she asked for. Rome didn't officially fall on that night in June, 455. The Western Roman Empire would limp along for another 21 years, until 476 AD, when the last emperor was quietly deposed by a Germanic chieftain who didn't even bother to claim the title for himself. But something ended in 455, something that could not be repaired. After the sack, no emperor truly controlled Rome again. The city that had once held 1 million people began to empty. Within a century, the population would fall to perhaps 20,000. The aqueducts went unrepaired. The forums fell silent. The marble was quarried for building material. 1,000 years of civilization, gradually returning to grass and rubble. But here's what stays with me about this story. Rome wasn't destroyed by Gaiseric's army. Rome was destroyed by Petronius Maximus, who put his own ambition above the stability of the empire. By 9 emperors in 25 years, each one more interested in surviving than in governing. By a ruling class that had forgotten that their power came with responsibility. By a population that had stopped believing that Rome was worth defending. Gaiseric didn't conquer Rome. Rome handed itself to him, the most powerful empire in the history of the world, brought down not by a superior force, but by a letter. If you want to know what happened next, how the Western Roman Empire finally collapsed completely, and what the world looked like after, that story is coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and drop a comment below. Who do you think is really to blame for the fall of Rome? Petronius Maximus? Eudoxia? Or had Rome been doomed long before either of them? I'll see you in the next one.